Today we're going to go over your first cut with the 3018 Pro and pretty much just review the basics. So the first thing we're going to do is, if you have not seen my previous video getting started with the 3018 Pro, I urge you to go over and check it out. It has a lot of good information. It'll get you right to this point, right to the point where you're ready to get this started, get to cutting. And so let's jump right into it. First thing we need to do is we need to know the size of the material that we're going to be carving on. And it's really important that you have this accurate to what's in your software so that when you start cutting, the machine knows specifically where it needs to cut. So mine is 7 inches by 8 inches. And this is all for just example purposes. You can use any scrap wood for this. I recommend you just doing this simple cut like we're going to do today, just to get the feel of it. So we're going to, in easel, we're going to come up top here. We're going to change the width to 7 inches. And, excuse me, 8 inches wide. I said it backwards. 8 inches by 7 inches. And we'll just leave it on plywood, click away from it, and now we told the software, and the thickness of it. Thickness is really important. Mine happens to be 3/4 of an inch. We're going to put down here 0.75. Again, if you're using millimeters, then you can just convert that over, click away, and however you see fit to measure yours. So now that we have this exactly here and we told this what we're going to do, what size it is, the first thing we're going to do is clamp this down. So we have the basic clamps that came with the machine. How they pretty much work is the nut slides under here, and then this spins around this way, and you just tighten down this the bolt here, the nut on top. This is kind of like your adjuster, the back piece, depending on how tight, how firm you want to get it. You can actually just kind of get it snug and then use this as your adjuster to get it even tighter if you choose. Let me back this up a little bit. Right there's where I want it. Okay, now that we've got this secure, it's not going to go anywhere. Everything's nice and snug. What we're going to do now is we are going to choose a bit to put in here, and I'm going to use just one of the regular bits that came with the Yora product. And if you don't have these, you can get them from their website. They are the 20 degree 0.1 millimeter tip, and we're just going to use this for example purposes. As you can see, it's a pretty fine tip. It's a 1 flute. It's what they call 1 flute, is it only has one, what do you call it on there? 1 flute. This is a 2 flute, but it has actually 2 cutting blades on it. So that's the difference, and it is a 1/8 of an inch shaft. So speaking of that, you're going to get a different collets. One that comes with it is for the 1/8 inch bits. And if you purchase the package, you're going to get different bits. One for 1/4 inch. This one's like for 1/4 inch. This one's a little bit bigger. This one's probably a little bit smaller. You're going to get different ones. So how these work is, you have to push it all the way in. You have to snap it in. So you kind of do it on an angle a little bit, and then till it snaps in. And you know it's in when it spins freely and it won't come out. That's how you know it's in. And when we're going to put this up here, and how that works is, as you can see, the bit is just going to go up inside there. And one thing to note is whenever, some people say, how far do you put the bit up there? How far do you not put it up there? As you can see, I don't prefer to put it up past, but I mean, you can. You definitely don't want it that close because you don't want your machine to hit the board. However, I want you to see something. When you put a bit inside here, if you only put it in a little bit, if you tend to leave that much hanging out, what's going to happen is your machine's going to get a chatter. you're going to possibly get a chatter with it because it doesn't have any stability. The further up it is, like that's a good distance, it's much harder to move it, and you're going to get a better cut with that. You see that? So for this example, I'm going to probably put this up there. Well, probably about that much will be fine. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put this on the spindle first. We're going to just screw it up till it almost gets snug up in there. And then we're going to put our bit in. Like I said, put it up there so far, and then kind of tighten it with my hand so it won't fall. Get our fancy dancy wrenches, and then we are going to tighten it up. Pretty tight. Doesn't need to be killer tight, but it needs to be snug so it's not going to go anywhere. So now that we have our bit in place, we got the wood clamp down, we've got everything on, we got the thickness, we've told the machine what we're doing. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to move this camera over a little bit here, and let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger for you. There we go. So let's slide this over. I don't really care what the 3D preview looks like. And then we're going to click home. It's going to bring us in. So then let's just do a square. Let's just come up here. Let's just create a square. There's our square, and that's perfectly fine. Let's just say it's a whole 1 inch. So the first thing we're going to do is, when you see here, it's actually going to cut out a pocket. Let me move this out of the way again. Let me move down here. It's actually going to cut out a pocket, and I don't want to cut out a pocket. I just want to cut on the actual line. So you're going to choose this here, and you're going to go cut on the path, as you can see, or you can cut outside the shape, or you can cut inside the shape. I'm going to cut on the shape. So it's actually going to cut directly onto it, which is just basically what we want. The other thing we want to look at is the depth. How deep do we want it to cut down? Let me zoom in here. I don't want it to go very deep, just for example purposes. So 1/8 of an inch is still a little bit much. If you want to put it in manually, you could put it here, like for example 0.05. Not very much at all. So that's perfectly fine for this example right there. So go over to shape. Here's where you can actually change the size of it if you want to rotate it on an angle. If you want to put corners on it, you could put corners on it, and so forth. So for this example, that's all that we are going to do. And what you need to note is this here, while you're looking at this square, this white larger outer frame represents your wood. Let me move this camera up here. That larger frame represents your wood here. So keep that in mind, that on the square here that you're going to be cutting out, wherever this bit is, it's going to be, if we start the bit here, the 0, 0 on your screen is where it thinks you're going to be starting. So for this example, we're going to not really go right there. We're going to kind of go right here just for right now. But that's important whenever you're doing another cut. If this is your final material, you're going to want to make sure this bit goes over there. But for this example, we're just going to run a simple cut. Let's move it down to the bottom left. And an easy way to do that is come over to your shape and change your X and Y to 0. And make sure that the position is the bottom left here. So that is the absolute corner there. So the other thing, now that we pretty much have our shape ready, we are going to come up and we're going to change our bit. So let's scroll down, and I do not see this bit here as listed as the 0.1 millimeter. So we're going to choose other right here, and we're going to put 0.1 millimeter. So 0.1 millimeter is the bit. And we're going to click away, and that is going to be our bit. You can click simulate, and it'll kind of show you cameras. What it will look like here. There's the square. You can't really see it because it's so small. But if you hold the shift key, you can actually move that around. You can kind of see, if you zoom in, this is what it's going to do. Not going to do very much, but that's what it's going to do. And so what we're going to do now is we've got our bit, we've got the plywood, we've got the triangle here. Let's move this up here for a minute. Right over there is good. We've got the triangle here. That's all the deep we're going. And let's check our cut settings. The automatic cut settings is not, I do not recommend that. Pretty much it's way too fast, 30. Depending on what you're cutting, what you're doing, you can go more aggressive as you get along and get better used to it. I recommend going to manual, changing it to about 10 to start with. The plunge rate 9 is okay. The depth per pass 0.028 is not bad. Maybe for starting out purposes, I would do 0.02, and then you can work your way up. It also depends on the type of wood you have. If it's hardwood, softwood, how aggressive you're going to be cutting, and also how thin your bit is. If you're using a 1/4 inch bit, I tend to be able to go a little bit more aggressive because it's a much stronger bit. But when I'm using a really, really thin tip like this here, that's going to be so much easier to break. So now that we've got those, we are going to come up to carve. And let's turn our machine on. Let's make sure, move this camera again, it's all in the way. Let's make sure that we've got everything we can move. Let's jog the machine. This is your how far the machine's going to travel as you jog the machine. I just want to make sure that we have full control, everything's working. So let's move the machine. I'm going to say, let's say this happened to be our corner. I'm going to put an X right on it right here. So for this purpose, I'm going to move this up here now. I'm going to jog the machine over to that spot. Lower my tip down. I'm going to put, now I like doing that to get a little bit closer so that I know exactly where my corner is going to be. And I'm pretty darn close right there. So another thing is your 0 point. So now that I have it right here, this technically, quote unquote, is my X and Y 0 point because that's where I'm actually going to start at. So the other thing is we need to set our Z-axis, which sometimes to me is more important than anything because you need to know if we leave this up this far up off. If I can zoom this in for you, you can. You can see here, it's way far off, and when we start cutting, it's not even going to touch the board once we start cutting it. So it's really important that you make sure that is on 0. So I'm just going to keep the screen right here so you can see me pretty good. I like sliding a piece of paper under there, and I'll click on in easel. I'm going to choose the 0.01 millimeter so it doesn't travel very far, and I'm just going to keep telling the Z-axis to go down until it hits that paper. Oops, so now, actually right there, so it stopped. Actually, it's touching the paper and touching the board, so that technically is going to be my Z-axis. So now I have the machine X, Y, and Z perfectly where I want it at. And so now I'm not going to jog the machine anymore. We are going to move this out of the way, and let's go through the first cut. So we're going to confirm our material thickness. Did that. We are going to make sure it's all clamped down. It is. That is the bit we're using. Yes, it is. And confirm bit size. Confirm work 0. Do we have this in the 0 position? The answer is yes. And so I'm going to click use new position. And so now it knows, and it's going to go up. It's going to move up here and cut that square. And so we're going to tell it to raise the bit. And then we're going to say turn on spindle. When it's on, we're going to choose it's on and then click carve. I'm going to go ahead and maximize this screen for you to see. And one thing I want to mention is when it starts carving up top here, you're going to see the feed rate, and always be ready to slow it down if you need to in case it's going too aggressive. Turn the spindle on, and it is on, and carve. So now that it's going, let's go ahead and maximize that for you. going to move over to where it started, and it should shut itself off. So there we go. So let me make this small down here for you again. So the carve is complete, and what I want you, other thing to notice is the, when you're looking on my screen here, see the square down here is the, let me see if I can zoom in here a bit. You notice the bottom left is the material, and that's where we started, and you notice that's the bottom left of the corner here. So just wanted you to keep that in mind. You can see the bottom left here is where we had it, and that was our first carve, and that was really simple. If you wanted to, let me get rid of this again. If you wanted to cut another one, let me just show you one more thing here. Let's just say you want to cut it again, and or you had another square on here and you moved it over. Let's say we move it, move it over here. Didn't want me to grab it up this way, and we left that as our 0 point, and we want to cut another one. It's going to move up over here and cut it. And let's say this one we only want to go one pass. So if you remember our cut settings, our depth per pass was And that's pretty much it. The machine came over, went back to the starting point, and if you remember, on the software we moved over the square and it went over there and cut, and that's pretty much it. Any design that you have on your screen, that's what it's going to do. I would recommend, let's see if we can move this out of the way before we try and take it off. I definitely would move this. Lift that up, oh, maybe too far. Right there. So then, let's take this off. And there we have it. There's your first cut. Really simple. I hope this helped everybody, and if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Jungle.